Oh, for God's sakes.
Greetings everyone, Unsafe Kibble here. So this video has been a long time coming, I promised it. So we will continue our ranking of low-level runs of Final Fantasy games with Final Fantasies 7 through 12 today, excluding 11, but including 10-2. We'll do the MMOs at another time. So again, a low-level game is a game without some type of leveling mechanic. We have already ranked Final Fantasies 1 through 6 in this method, so we're going to add the games I've mentioned, and we're going to go in numerical order, starting with 7 and ending with 12. So with that, let's get started. It is worth noting at the start that abbreviations are going to be a common thing that you see in each of these games. I will try to explain what they are, but each game has a wide variety of abbreviations, the most common of which will be LLG, which stands for low level game or lowest level game. So Final Fantasy VII, when I played this, I did a lowest level game with no materia and no items. This involved a lot of using limit breaks. Overall, the game was fairly challenging in this perspective. I imagine that just a low level game would make it a little bit easier. But the problem is doing a lowest level game, you have to manage your experience interestingly. So if your person is alive but not in the party, they will gain experience. So the way you manage who gets experience is you basically have to finish fights with characters dead in your active party. Doing this, you can reach the final boss at level 29, I think is your final level. I believe that I had someone at level 30, so technically it wasn't lowest level. How you manage things and how you adapt beyond that is really up to you. And there are some creative solutions. There are some pinch points. Carry armor is an absolute beast in this run. I ended up using the end to get past them, though Garland the Great has shown that you can get past using Tifa. So I would probably rank this as in between Final Fantasy V and VI in terms of where it would fit low-level game, making it the second best game to play at present. Final Fantasy VIII is a strange one. The game is designed around enemy encounters that level with you, so doing a no leveling run can put the game on easy mode. The first time I did a low-level run of this game, I allowed the junctioning of stats. So what you do is you farm Curaga, you junction that to your health stat, you have 7,000 HP at level 1, and since the enemies scale off of you, everything is on easy mode. So I went back and I redid this without allowing any junctioning of magic to stats. So you could junction a Guardian Force so that you could do more than just attack. This made the game more challenging, very interesting. I also did the super bosses under more restrictive conditions, but the problem with Final Fantasy VIII is the scaling levels of the enemies and the fact that the game appears to be built on the edge of the knife. There's so much that you could do to add challenge to the game, but you could very easily tip over and just absolutely make the game well nigh impossible to do, and a ridiculous RNG grind. So for that reason, I would say that it's problematic, and I would probably rank it lower. Forced to decide where that's going to go right now, I'm probably going to put it between Final Fantasy III, which I really enjoyed, and Final Fantasy II, and say that's kind of where it fits in my mind.
Okay, so it looks like
The first game in the series that you can actually level 1 in a while without some weird managing of experience is Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy VIII, the bosses gave no experience, but they were mandatory encounters. You don't have to manage mandatory encounters in Final Fantasy IX except for the very beginning of the game. So you can run it at level 1. Ultimately, this was a fun game. It involved lots of innovative strategies that I hadn't thought of. The super boss in particular, Ozma, was tricky to figure out. There is a point in the game in Pandemonium, where you have to decide who's going to level if you're going to finish the game, because there are, I believe, 3, maybe 4 mandatory fights, if I recall correctly, that someone has to gain XP. So you have to elect who you're going to fight the final boss with much earlier if you're going to do the whole thing level 1. That being said, it was easier to manage than Final Fantasy VIII. Some of the strategies were a little more enjoyable. There was significantly more grinding in this game, though, trying to build up my Dragon Crest and Frog catches so that I could do actual damage. So I probably am going to say that this is going to be above Final Fantasy III in the ranking. Okay, this game is majestic in terms of running it. You could run it as a no spear grid game, and you would absolutely have a fantastic time, but it would not be very challenging. So I adapted the hardest challenge. I did no spear grid, no summons, no customization, no overdrives, no encounters, no escape, no blitzball, and made it up to the final boss, Braska's Final Aeon. I then customized 2 pieces of gear, one for Auron and one for Riku, which reduced the RNG. So did not finish the challenge under those conditions, but I made it much more enjoyable for me, and I didn't feel like grinding more than the 20 hours on the final boss I already had. The way in which this game works with the alternating in characters in and out, and the managing of strategies, especially for the harder bosses like Seymour Flux and Unalaska, ultimately requires tons of planning. So you kind of can't do it on your own unless you want to have to backtrack by tens of hundreds of hours in the game to try to recover things that you should have built up earlier. However, following a guide, this was a really cool challenge to do, and I was impressed that you could still even pull it off. It's a beautiful game. In terms of low-level challenge, I would say that this is the best game to low-level challenge run. I would rank this as number 1 on the list. Final Fantasy X-II was a slightly different beast. They ditched the spear grid in favor of the garment grid. So in order to do this game at the lowest level possible, you do have to roll into New Game Plus. It is the only way to prevent leveling. There is a series of, I think, 4, maybe 3 fights at the opening where you must manage XP, and someone in your party trio must go to level 2. Beyond that, the other 2 party members can't stay at 1, and then you can put no XP bans on them and manage them down. In order to succeed later in this game, there are various different garment grid techniques that you can use, such as Finale, the End, and Throw Gill as a Dark Samurai. So ultimately, the game kind of was not very challenging when you started using some of those techniques. So we tried to avoid them as much as possible. It became kind of impossible at the end, but you're also able to do some very interesting stuff. You can do the super bosses. I believe I put a video out there of Riku at level 3 soloing Major Numerous, which does involve hero potions and some items that make you invincible, but you have to manage them in such a way to keep the invincibility up for the entire fight. That and Tremo were pretty difficult to pull off and pretty fun. Overall, though, just the low-level game experience is definitely going to be worse than 10, probably going to be worse than Final Fantasy V, probably close to on par with 6 is where I would put it, but we'll probably put it a little below 6 because of some other issues with the way the game's set up. But there you go. Final Fantasy XII, you could do this in New Game. However, once you have cleared Trial Stage 100, you unlock something called New Game Minus, sometimes referred to as Weak Mode, and sometimes referred to as 122-323. All of these refer to the same thing. New Game Minus is the special mode that unlocks which your characters do not level no matter what happens in the game. So you can do anything else. This made staying low-level game much easier. You could also add difficult techniques on there, and I was playing the Zodiac Age version, and I understand that it is quite a different beast than the original game on PS2. However, overall, I found it a pretty enjoyable experience. Final Fantasy XII, if it has a problem, is related to the story and people saying that it's very Star Warsy and the game world being absolutely expansive in response to some of the complaints about Final Fantasies X and X-II not having wide world exploration, and probably an effort to encapsulate the enormous world of Final Fantasy XI in a offline format. But all of those complaints don't really deal with low-level game. Low-level game, there was a lot of technique to use. You could have farmed for some of the more OP hidden bow stuff, but I didn't. Overall, I think this probably ranks somewhere around 6 again. I would probably put it ahead of X-II. I think it edges out 6 because of some of the variety of stuff that you can do and some of the techniques that can be deployed. There's also significantly more to do here than in Final Fantasy VI, so I enjoyed that. So that is where I would put it. And that brings us to this final list ranking of Final Fantasies 1 through 12, excluding 11, but adding in X-II at a low-level game. I'm working on finishing up Final Fantasy 13-2 at this point, and some of the other games, and we will try to add more to this list of what I thought when I'm ready to build some stuff up.